Hello, and welcome back to the Sleep Lab. Tonight there are no advertisements waiting to interrupt you, no sudden breaks to pull you out of the quiet, only my voice, and the smallest, oldest library ever written, curled up right now inside nearly every cell of your own body. DNA is a molecule so small it cannot be seen by any ordinary microscope, and yet if you unwound the DNA inside just one of your cells and stretched it out straight, it would measure roughly 6 feet long, a thread of instruction thin enough to hide inside a nucleus and long enough to nearly reach the ceiling. Tonight we're going to drift through 100 small, quietly mysterious facts about this molecule, one gentle detail after another, offered slowly enough to let each one settle before the next one arrives. Nothing tonight needs to be remembered. Just let it unwind gently in your mind, the way DNA itself unwinds inside a cell preparing to divide. If this kind of journey is worth your time, a like, a subscribe, or a thought left below helps this small lab keep its lights on for other sleepy minds finding their way here. But for now, there is nothing you need to do except settle in, let your body grow heavy, and let 100 small truths about the code written inside you drift gently over you instead. Let's begin. 1. Every human being carries roughly 3 billion base pairs of DNA inside nearly every one of their cells, a code long enough that reading it aloud, 1 letter per second, would take over 90 years. 2. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, a name most people learn once in school and quietly forget, long after the molecule itself keeps working, silently, inside every cell of their body. 3. DNA is built from just 4 chemical letters, adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, and the entire staggering complexity of a living human being arises from the order in which those 4 letters repeat. 4. If you stretched out all the DNA contained within a single human body, cell by cell, end to end, it would reach the sun and back more than 60 times over. 5. Despite this staggering total length, each individual strand inside a single cell is compressed so tightly that it fits inside a nucleus smaller than the width of a human hair. 6. DNA's famous double helix shape, 2 strands twisted gently around one another, was first properly described in 1953 by James Watson and Francis Crick, building on crucial data gathered by Rosalind Franklin. 7. Rosalind Franklin's X-ray diffraction images, particularly one known as Photo 51, provided essential evidence for the helix structure, though her contribution went largely unrecognized during her own lifetime. 8. Humans share roughly 99.9% of their DNA with every other human being on Earth, meaning the entire visible range of human diversity rests on a remarkably small genetic difference. 9. Humans share approximately 98% of their DNA with chimpanzees, our closest living evolutionary relatives, a similarity that continues to surprise people encountering it for the first time. 10. Even bananas share roughly 60% of their DNA with humans, a reminder that the basic genetic code underlying life is far more universal than most people ever pause to consider. 11. Only around 1 to 2% of human DNA actually codes for proteins, the working molecules that build and run the body, with the remaining majority serving other, still actively researched functions. 12. This non-coding DNA was once dismissively nicknamed junk DNA, though modern research has found that much of it plays a genuine, important role in regulating when and how other genes are switched on. 13. DNA is copied inside your body constantly, with trillions of new cells created every single day, each one requiring its own faithful, freshly duplicated copy of the entire genetic code. 14. The enzyme responsible for copying DNA, called DNA polymerase, can add new genetic letters at a rate of roughly 50 per second, an astonishing pace considering the precision required. 15. Despite this speed, DNA replication is remarkably accurate, making only about 1 error for every 10 billion letters copied, thanks to built-in proofreading mechanisms working quietly alongside the copying process. 16. When errors do occur and go uncorrected, they become mutations, small changes in the genetic code that can be harmless, occasionally harmful, and very rarely, genuinely beneficial. 17. Mutations are the raw material of evolution itself, the quiet, gradual source of genetic variation that natural selection has shaped into the astonishing diversity of life found across the entire planet. 18. Identical twins share nearly identical DNA at birth, yet small mutations can accumulate independently in each twin over a lifetime, meaning even genetically identical twins are never truly, perfectly identical. 19. Your DNA is unique to you, with the exception of identical twins, and the odds of two unrelated people sharing the exact same complete genetic sequence are effectively, functionally impossible. 20. DNA fingerprinting, a technique developed in 1984 by British geneticist Alec Jeffreys, transformed forensic science by allowing individuals to be identified through small, distinctive patterns within their genetic code. 21. The very first criminal case solved using DNA evidence occurred in England in 1986, both convicting a guilty man and exonerating another who had previously, wrongly confessed to the crime. 22. DNA can survive for a remarkably long time under the right conditions, with scientists successfully extracting and sequencing genetic material from woolly mammoth remains tens of thousands of years old. 23. The oldest DNA ever successfully sequenced, recovered from ancient permafrost in Greenland, is estimated to be roughly 2 million years old, offering a genuine window into an ecosystem long vanished. 24. DNA does eventually break down over time, and scientists generally believe genetic material cannot survive intact for much longer than about 1 to 1.5 million years, even under ideal, frozen conditions. 25. This natural limit is part of why recovering usable DNA from dinosaurs, which went extinct 66 million years ago, remains firmly outside the reach of current science, despite popular fiction suggesting otherwise. 26. Your DNA carries information not only about your physical traits but about your ancestry, and modern genetic testing can trace ancestral migration patterns stretching back tens of thousands of years. 27. Genetic research suggests that all humans alive today share a common maternal ancestor, sometimes called mitochondrial Eve, who is believed to have lived in Africa roughly 150,000 to 200,000 years ago. 28. This shared ancestor is not the only woman who lived at that time, but simply the most recent common ancestor along an unbroken maternal line connecting every person living today. 29. Mitochondrial DNA, passed down almost exclusively from mother to child, is separate from the DNA found in a cell's nucleus, carrying its own small, distinct set of genetic instructions. 30. We've reached the first third of tonight's list. Somewhere, right now, inside your own body, a cell is quietly, carefully copying its DNA in preparation for tomorrow. 31. Mitochondria, the small structures inside cells responsible for generating energy, are believed to have originated as independent bacteria that were absorbed by larger cells billions of years ago. 32. This theory, called endosymbiosis, is supported directly by the fact that mitochondria still carry their own separate DNA, a quiet genetic echo of their once independent, bacterial past. 33. A human genome, the complete set of DNA instructions for building an entire person, contains an estimated 20,000 to 25,000 individual genes. 34. The full human genome was first completely sequenced in 2003, a landmark international scientific effort called the Human Genome Project, which took roughly 13 years and billions of dollars to complete. 35. Sequencing an entire human genome today can be done in a matter of hours for a few $100s, a staggering improvement in speed and cost compared to the original, decade-spanning project. 36. Genes are not evenly distributed across your DNA, and some chromosomes are considerably richer in genetic information than others, with chromosome 1 carrying the most genes of any single chromosome. 37. Humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes, 46 in total, inherited in equal measure from each biological parent, half from the egg and half from the sperm. 38. One of those 23 pairs determines biological sex, with a combination of two X chromosomes typically associated with female development and an X paired with a Y typically associated with male development. 39. The Y chromosome is considerably smaller than the X chromosome and carries far fewer genes, a genuine evolutionary asymmetry that continues to be actively studied by researchers today. 40. Some traits, including certain forms of colorblindness, are more common in men specifically because the responsible gene sits on the X chromosome, and men carry only a single copy of it. 41. Eye color, once taught simply as a matter of one dominant and one recessive gene, is now understood to be influenced by at least several different genes working together in more complex combination. 42. Height is influenced by hundreds of different genes working together, each contributing only a small effect, which is part of why height varies so continuously across an entire population. 43. Some traits, including certain rare genetic conditions, are caused by a single, specific mutation in just one particular gene, a considerably simpler genetic story than most ordinary human traits. 44. Genetic conditions caused by a single gene mutation are collectively called Mendelian disorders, named after Gregor Mendel, the 19th-century monk whose careful pea-plant experiments first revealed the basic rules of inheritance. 45. Mendel's foundational work, conducted quietly in a monastery garden in the 1860s, went largely unrecognized during his own lifetime, only becoming widely appreciated decades after his death. 46. Epigenetics, a genuinely fascinating field of study, examines how environmental factors can influence which genes are actively turned on or off, without ever actually changing the underlying DNA sequence itself. 47. Some epigenetic changes have been found to be passed down to offspring, meaning a parent's environment and experiences may, in certain documented cases, subtly influence gene expression in their children. 48. Identical twins, despite starting life with identical DNA, can develop increasingly different epigenetic patterns over time, part of why twins sometimes grow to look, and even age, somewhat differently. 49. Telomeres, small protective caps found at the very ends of chromosomes, naturally shorten slightly each time a cell divides, a process closely connected to the biology of aging. 50. We've reached the halfway point of tonight's list. Somewhere, right now, inside your own quietly aging cells, tiny protective telomeres are doing their steady, patient work. 51. The enzyme telomerase can rebuild and lengthen telomeres, and while most adult cells produce very little of it, certain cells, including some cancer cells, produce it in genuinely excessive amounts. 52. This connection between telomerase and cancer has made it a genuinely important area of ongoing medical research, since understanding it better could meaningfully inform future cancer treatments. 53. Some animals, including certain species of lobster, produce telomerase throughout their entire lives, which researchers believe contributes to their remarkably slow, gradual aging process compared to most other animals. 54. DNA is not evenly active throughout a person's life, and specific genes can switch on or off at different life stages, part of why certain genetic conditions only become noticeable well into adulthood. 55. Your DNA carries the instructions for building every protein in your body, and proteins themselves carry out nearly every essential function, from digesting food to fighting infection to allowing muscles to move. 56. The process of converting a DNA gene into an actual, working protein involves two major steps, transcription and translation, both carried out by specialized molecular machinery inside every cell. 57. RNA, a close chemical cousin of DNA, acts as a temporary messenger, copying genetic instructions from DNA and carrying them to the cell's protein-building machinery. 58. Unlike DNA's stable double helix, RNA is typically single-stranded, allowing it to move more freely within the cell to carry out its own temporary, essential messenger role. 59. Some viruses, including the virus responsible for the common cold, store their genetic information in RNA rather than DNA, a genuinely different, faster mutating strategy for encoding life's instructions. 60. CRISPR, a revolutionary gene editing technology developed in the early 2010s, allows scientists to precisely cut and edit specific sections of DNA, a discovery recognized with the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. 61. CRISPR was actually first discovered as a natural defense mechanism used by bacteria to recognize and destroy the DNA of invading viruses, later adapted by scientists into one of biology's most powerful tools. 62. Gene therapy, the practice of correcting or replacing faulty genes to treat disease, has moved from theoretical possibility to genuine medical treatment, with several approved therapies now helping patients with specific genetic conditions. 63. Some genetic conditions, including sickle cell disease, have recently been treated using CRISPR-based gene editing, offering patients a level of genuine, lasting relief previously unavailable through conventional treatment alone. 64. DNA barcoding, a technique using small, standardized sections of genetic code, allows scientists to quickly identify and distinguish between different species, even from a single small tissue sample. 65. This technique has been used to detect mislabeled seafood in restaurants and grocery stores, revealing that a surprising percentage of fish sold under one name actually belongs to an entirely different species. 66. Ancient DNA recovered from archaeological sites has helped researchers trace human migration patterns with remarkable precision, confirming and sometimes genuinely challenging long-held historical assumptions. 67. Genetic evidence suggests that Neanderthals and early modern humans interbred, and most people with European or Asian ancestry today carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA as a result. 68. A separate ancient human relative, the Denisovans, known almost entirely through DNA evidence rather than extensive fossil remains, also left a genetic trace in certain modern populations, particularly in parts of Oceania. 69. Your DNA contains remnants of ancient viruses, called endogenous retroviruses, which inserted themselves into the genomes of our distant ancestors millions of years ago and have been quietly passed down ever since. 70. These ancient viral remnants make up a surprisingly large portion of the human genome, roughly 8%, a strange, quiet reminder written directly into our own genetic code. 71. Some of these ancient viral genes have actually been repurposed by evolution for genuinely useful functions, including certain genes now essential for the healthy development of the human placenta. 72. DNA can be extracted from remarkably unusual sources, including old chewing gum, licked stamps, and even the saliva left behind on a discarded coffee cup. 73. Forensic genealogy, combining DNA evidence with public genealogical databases, has helped solve decades-old cold cases by identifying distant relatives of an unknown suspect through shared genetic markers. 74. Some plants carry astonishingly large genomes, and the Japanese flower Paris japonica has a genome roughly 50 times larger than the entire human genome, despite being a considerably simpler organism. 75. Genome size does not correlate with an organism's biological complexity, a puzzle researchers have nicknamed the C-value paradox, still not entirely, fully resolved even today. 76. The DNA inside a single cell, if you could somehow read it as ordinary text, would fill hundreds of thousands of pages, an entire small library curled quietly inside something invisible to the naked eye. 77. Despite its length, your entire genome is copied with remarkable speed each time a cell divides, completing the process in a matter of hours rather than the years it might seem to require. 78. Bacteria reproduce so quickly that some species can copy their entire, considerably smaller genome and divide into two new cells in under 20 minutes under ideal conditions. 79. Scientists have successfully created synthetic DNA in the laboratory, and in 2010, researchers built an entire functioning bacterial genome from scratch, inserting it into a cell to create a partially synthetic organism. 80. DNA has even been explored as a potential data storage medium, since its molecular density theoretically allows for storing entire libraries of digital information within an amount of material smaller than a grain of sand. 81. Researchers have already successfully encoded books, images, and even short video files directly into synthetic DNA sequences, then accurately retrieved that same information afterward. 82. DNA is remarkably stable compared to conventional digital storage, and properly preserved genetic material could theoretically retain readable information for thousands of years without any need for electricity. 83. Some animals possess genuinely unusual genetic quirks, and the axolotl, a salamander capable of regenerating entire limbs, has a genome roughly 10 times larger than the human genome. 84. Researchers studying the axolotl's genetic code hope to eventually understand the specific genes responsible for its remarkable regenerative ability, with potential future relevance for human medicine. 85. Tardigrades, tiny, nearly indestructible microscopic animals, carry unique genes that help protect their own DNA from extreme radiation, dehydration, and even the vacuum of outer space. 86. Some of these protective tardigrade genes have been successfully inserted into human cells in laboratory experiments, offering those cells measurably increased resistance to radiation damage. 87. DNA testing has revolutionized paternity determination, agricultural breeding, and wildlife conservation, offering a level of precise, individual identification simply unavailable through any other available method. 88. Conservationists use DNA analysis to track endangered species populations, identify illegal wildlife trafficking, and even reintroduce genetic diversity into dangerously small, inbred wild populations. 89. Some extinct species may one day be partially revived through a process called de-extinction, using preserved DNA in closely related living species, though the science remains genuinely complex and actively debated. 90. The woolly mammoth is among the most frequently discussed candidates for de-extinction research, given the relatively well-preserved DNA recovered from mammoth remains found frozen in Arctic permafrost. 91. Your DNA changes very slightly over your own lifetime, accumulating small mutations in various cells as you age, a natural, ongoing process researchers continue to study for its connection to aging and disease. 92. Cancer, at its most basic biological level, arises from mutations that cause cells to divide uncontrollably, a genuine reminder of how precisely DNA replication normally needs to be regulated to keep the body healthy. 93. Some people carry inherited genetic mutations that meaningfully increase their risk for certain cancers, knowledge that has allowed for earlier screening and, in some cases, genuinely life-saving preventive care. 94. DNA repair mechanisms work constantly inside your cells, correcting damage caused by sunlight, chemicals, and the simple, ordinary wear of cellular life, a quiet, tireless maintenance crew working every single day. 95. The 2015 Nobel Prize in Chemistry was awarded for research into exactly these DNA repair mechanisms, work that has meaningfully deepened scientific understanding of cancer and aging alike. 96. Every single one of your body's roughly 37 trillion cells, with only a few specific exceptions, carries a complete copy of your entire genetic code, an entire library repeated countless times over. 97. Despite carrying identical genetic information, different cells read only the specific portions relevant to their own particular job, which is part of why a skin cell and a brain cell look and behave so differently. 98. This selective gene reading, determined largely by epigenetic signals, is part of what allows a single fertilized cell to eventually develop into every different, specialized tissue found within a fully formed human body. 99. Every letter of your own DNA was inherited from parents who inherited theirs from their own parents, an unbroken chain of genetic information stretching back, quietly, unimaginably far into the past. 100. And perhaps the most mysterious truth of all is simply this, that somewhere inside you tonight, coiled tightly within nearly every one of your own quiet cells, rests the complete, patient instructions for building an entire human being. We have reached the end of tonight's 100 small, quietly mysterious truths about the molecule written inside every one of us. We touched a double helix first properly seen through Rosalind Franklin's careful X-ray images, and traced DNA's own ancient echoes, viral remnants, Neanderthal fragments, and a shared maternal ancestor connecting every person alive today. We considered telomeres quietly shortening with age, CRISPR's precise, borrowed bacterial defense, and tardigrades whose own tiny genetic tricks might one day help protect human cells from radiation. There is something gently worth carrying from a list built entirely around something so small and so essential, a reminder that an entire, complete set of instructions for building you has been quietly, faithfully present inside nearly every cell of your body since before you ever took your first breath. If tonight's 100 small mysteries were worth your time, a like, a subscribe, or a thought left below helps the Sleep Lab stay open for the next curious, sleepy mind who finds their way here. And if you're still awake, there's another story waiting just beyond this one, whenever you're ready for it. But for now, let your own cells continue their quiet, patient work, copying, repairing, and resting exactly as they always have. Let your body grow heavy. Let your breathing slow. Sleep well. And good night.